I never imagined that the person I loved most in this world, the one I had given so much of my life to protect and sustain, would be the one to crush me with a single word: failure. It was not shouted, not even whispered in rage. It was delivered with that quiet, sharp edge that cuts deeper than any scream could. A single word. And suddenly, the years I had sacrificed, the dreams I had postponed, and the countless nights I had wept in silence all collapsed into dust. It felt as if my very existence had been invalidated, as though every choice I had made to keep her alive had been meaningless. For 5 years, I gave everything I had to my mother's treatment. When her body began betraying her, when doctors became her second family and hospitals her second home, I became her silent shadow. Bills piled up like mountains, crushing my chest, but I kept going. Each month, the paycheck I earned, sometimes through double shifts, sometimes through jobs I hated but endured, went directly to her survival. I watched my friends travel, start families, chase dreams, while I stood frozen in a cycle of medical charts, prescriptions, and the ever-present fear of another emergency phone call. At first, it didn't feel like a choice. She was my mother, the woman who gave me life, the woman whose hands had once held mine as I took my first steps. How could I not repay her when she stumbled? That was the thought that fueled me. Every late bill, every skipped meal, every cold night where I couldn't afford heating felt like a necessary trade. I told myself, this is love, this is duty, this is what good daughters do. But as the years stretched on, love began to feel more like a chain. I was 20 when the journey began. By 21, my savings account was empty. By 22, I was living paycheck to paycheck, and the word future had become a joke I told myself in the bathroom mirror. By 23, I no longer recognized the girl staring back at me. I was hollow-eyed, constantly exhausted, and yet still clinging to the belief that if I just kept going, if I just gave a little more, she would see me, not just as a caretaker, but as her daughter. 5 years. 5 years of pouring myself into her survival. 5 years of silence when she criticized me for not achieving more, for not looking as polished as my peers, for not being married or having children. I thought that once she realized how much I was carrying for her, she would finally acknowledge the weight on my shoulders, but that acknowledgement never came. Instead, one afternoon, after I had just finished paying yet another round of medical bills that nearly broke me, she looked at me with tired eyes and said, almost casually, "You're such a failure." The world tilted on its axis. My chest tightened so hard I thought my heart might stop. It wasn't just the insult, it was the betrayal. She knew what I had done. She knew the hours I had spent bent over ledgers, calculating what I could skip this month to make her payments possible. She knew the jobs I had taken, the opportunities one had turned down, the relationships that had dissolved because I had no time or energy to give. She knew. And yet, in her eyes, none of it was enough. That single word ripped apart the narrative I had built for myself. I had told myself that I was strong, that I was doing something noble. I had told myself that the reason my life looked so different from others my age was because I was sacrificing for love. But if the one I was sacrificing for didn't even see value in it, if she saw me as a failure, then what had I been doing all these years? In the days that followed, I replayed my entire life like a film reel. I remembered the countless times I had sat alone in sterile hospital waiting rooms, clutching my phone like a lifeline, waiting for updates. I remembered the moments when the doctor's bills felt like tidal waves crashing over me, drowning me, but I still managed to keep my head above water. I remembered the birthdays I had spent working overtime, the nights I had gone without dinner, the clothes I had worn until they fell apart because every penny went to her. I remembered how I used to believe that this story had a happy ending, that one day she would turn to me with gratitude in her eyes and say, "You saved me, you saved us both." But that ending never came. Instead, I got failure. The bitterness began to spread through me like poison. It clung to my bones, whispered in my ears when I tried to sleep, and followed me into every corner of my day. I began to wonder if maybe she had always seen me this way. Maybe in her eyes, no matter what I did, I was never enough. Maybe the sacrifices I thought were proof of my worth were invisible to her. The thought shattered something deep inside me. I tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe it was her illness talking, the exhaustion of endless treatments, the bitterness of her own declining health spilling over onto me. But even if that were true, the damage had been done. Words have weight. and hers landed like stones on my chest. As the weeks went on, I found myself pulling back. Where once I had been relentless, now I hesitated. When another bill arrived in the mail, I stared at it with cold detachment instead of frantic urgency. The guilt that had once pushed me into action dulled, replaced by a quiet rage that whispered, "Why should I keep giving when she only sees me as nothing?" And yet, the war inside me raged on, because despite everything, she was still my mother. The bond between us was tangled and complicated, woven with both love and pain. A part of me still wanted her approval, still longed for her to look at me and see a daughter worth loving, but another part of me, wounded, exhausted, and furious, wanted to let it all burn. I thought about the girl I had been at 20, full of potential, with 1,000 doors still open to me. I thought about the jobs I had turned down, the trips I had never taken, the relationships that had withered in my hands because I had nothing left to give. I thought about the nights I had cried myself to sleep, telling myself it would all be worth it in the end. And now I wondered if I had wasted not just 5 years, but the very best years of my life. The hardest part was realizing that I didn't even know who I was anymore. My identity had become so bound to her survival that without it, I felt like a ghost. If I wasn't the daughter who sacrificed everything, then who was I? Was there even anything left of me? That question haunted me more than her insult, because buried beneath the rage and the grief was fear. Fear that maybe she was right, maybe I was a failure, not because I hadn't tried, but because I had given everything and still had nothing to show for it. The story doesn't end here, of course, but this was the moment where the cracks began to spread, where the foundation of everything I had built started to crumble, and once cracks appear, they don't stop, they widen, they deepen, until the whole structure collapses. And I was collapsing, piece by piece, under the weight of a single word.